any way that we look at it, 2024 is a key and pivotal year for the future timelines that humanity will be able to access and align with. So today I'm going to be breaking down the key pivotal points of 2024 in order for us to navigate it consciously. The first thing that's very important to know when we're looking at energetic forecasts for an entire year is to know that there's going to be a lot of fluctuation depending on how conscious the collective is. So nothing is set in stone. And in fact, the more conscious humanity becomes, or even just individuals within that consciousness of humanity become, that's going to allow timelines to fluctuate drastically. So we have so much untapped potential and power within our own consciousness and the actions that we take to heavily impact the outcome and heavily impact the timelines that we're able to access. So knowing that, the number one thing that's most important to know about 2024 is that the light quota on Earth, in the form of solar flares, in the form of galactic energies that the Earth is being immersed in, is going to go up at a ratio that we have not ever embodied or been exposed to. That's the most important thing, because many of us who have been going through a spiritual awakening for some time now have been acclimating to solar flares. Our body, mind, spirit has been acclimating to light codes, to energies that are supportive of our expanding consciousness for a while now. But in 2024, even the most prepared spiritually and energetic fields will be exposed to a light quota that their energy field simply does not have the capacity to fully integrate and to fully assimilate into the whole energy field without going into some form of overwhelm. It's just the nature of how much light our entire environment is going to be immersed in. So it's really about riding energetic tidal waves in 2024. It's why the whole human collective is going to be able to access empowering timelines depending on how much we're able to consciously ground and embody these higher dimensional supportive light quotas. So when I'm saying that, I'm talking specifically about solar flares and light codes that are coming from our sun, the central sun, and the grand central sun. These are going to be done through continual geomagnetic storms. In fact, the networks of the central suns are going to be active the whole year, releasing high grades of plasma that are helping us open our heart and etherize our blood. So the grand central sun and our central sun, Alcyone, are all giving us a lot more energies than our body, mind, spirit is normally able to metabolize and balance and assimilate into our energy field. And that's simply because what's happening in 2025 is something that all of 2024 is in preparation of. So it's one of those energies of do the thing or get off the pot. And that's the best way I could describe 2024. It's that type of energy of preparation to where it's either going to make a being who is not conscious go absolutely insane in their degradation. It's going to deteriorate their consciousness if they can't keep up with this light quota, or it's something where it could just be experienced for those who are keeping up with these energetic tidal waves as simply overwhelming but bearable, as long as we're taking into account daily practices of embodiment and grounding. Because a major cycle is closing out in 2025, 2024 is going to be the energies that are pushing us into this new terrain that's going to come after this major karmic cycle is closing out in 2025. So because of that, what we're going to see essentially in a year is one giant tower moment. What I mean by tower moment is we're going to see a lot of chaos in every form that chaos could come. At a physical level, Gaia, or Mother Earth, is going to be very volatile, very active. Because when Earth shifts go through major closing out of cycles, such as we will be experiencing in 2025, what you're going to see before that is a lot of activity, a lot of volatility going on. And what that's doing at a physical Earth realm level is it's actually shifting the energies that are coming forward in an environmental purge within that reality. So all of the different ways that that's going to be shifting in ways that look very volatile, very unstabilizing and chaotic are ways that Gaia is essentially shifting the focus from being so third dimensional into going through an acceleration of purging all the things that are not in alignment with the shift in consciousness that's going to be moving forward. And so with that, what we see is at a physical level as well, the increase of war because of the agitation. You see, if we look at collective energies, what we see is an egoic state that is refusing to shift into a higher consciousness state. And so how we see that acting out in the physical, third dimensional Earth arena is through war, all of the different expressions of war. Now, what I see right now moving forward is something that's going to definitely be around the Eastern European-ish range, going on with that being a strong continued point of agitation in the form of war. But even just beyond that, what we're seeing with war in all of its many different forms right now taking place in the physical realm are actually a symbolism of the egoic way of human consciousness not shifting into unity consciousness. And whenever there's a strong push in the universe with the closing out of a cycle and moving into higher dimensional energies, unity consciousness energies, what you'll see is that anything that represents old paradigm consciousness, such as the way that the ego has been reigning within this Earth arena, either can integrate and shift its consciousness, or what it will do is actually resist that and go into super inflammatory and agitated states. So what we're seeing in 2024 is a vying for your attention, for everyone's attention, focusing that attention in the way that the ego wants to still maintain its old paradigm way. And so it's acting out in all these different ways on the Earth arena, through war, through strong strife and conflict, versus vying for our attention in the spiritual realm through spiritual warfare. So you're going to see conflicts of war and the chaos of that pop up in every arena, vying for a person's attention. And the reason why our attention is so important and it's being vied over is because how we choose to utilize our conscious attention, our conscious focus, and the actions that are taken from that place determines so much of what we're able to access moving forward with these timelines. So if you see the ego super agitated, stuck in a trauma cycle, a victim, perpetrator, rescuer, all of these different expressions of that one core energy of the victim. That's the victim consciousness of ego holding on firmly to its old paradigm and its old identity, that wants to drag as many people down with it as possible. And so that's naturally producing a strong pull in 2024's attention. Now, the interesting thing about all of this is that the light codes that Earth is being immersed in is pushing people's consciousness into that state of agitation, or what I call entropy. To learn more about that, you can watch my video on that titled Chaos and Order, Entropy Explained. And when a consciousness is agitated and it's going into that state of hyperinflammation, what's happening is that it's not going into higher states of consciousness, and that's why it's acting out that way. So that's the really interesting thing to know is that it's actually higher consciousness, higher dimensional energies that are causing so much chaos in the world. So it's not the other way around. Now, another defining feature of 2024 is how electric our reality gets. There's going to be an increase in the electrification of Earth. And that's not necessarily a really beneficial thing, but it is something that is a rite of passage for the human consciousness and for our experience to move through. So when it comes to the electrification of Earth intensifying, what that means is that anytime we experience something supportive and beneficial coming through in the form of energetic support, such as light codes, solar flares, and what have you, what you also have is the polar opposite of that. You have a synthetic way of taking the Earth into a state of consciousness where that higher dimensional energy has a harder time penetrating and being received to support our evolution. And how that's going to play out is through the electrification of Earth, meaning that the way that our grids are set up here is going to experience more electromagnetic influence, more electromagnetic smog, burden, impact. And so what that does is actually attune our consciousness. It tunes into our consciousness so that we start aligning with its way of thinking. Now, we don't have to. I'm just telling you so that we are aware, and therefore we could use that knowledge. We can apply this awareness so that we don't become controlled by this impulse. And what this impulse is to create more electrification, even in space, just beam Earth into a false grid matrix. It's heavily influencing our consciousness to repeat a past karmic cycle. And what that past karmic cycle is the karma of Atlantis. Anytime you see technology and the increase of an electric impulse within a civilization rise out of balance with human organic consciousness, so that our electric AI even, or technological impulse becomes more advanced than our organic human consciousness, what that's doing is creating a call to the entire galactic universe for organic human consciousness to become cleansed, shall we say. But cleansing is too strong of a word. I prefer doom hellfire. And that's what gets called forward anytime human organic consciousness is being surpassed in its own intelligence by an electric technological impulse. Anytime humanity's consciousness does not, in equal proportion to its technology, rise together, once that imbalance is created, there becomes a deterioration of life. That's just the facts. So, does that mean that we fear AI, we fear technological advances? No. What that means is we become aware of how to consciously utilize technology so that it can do what its organic, sacred purpose always was and is, which is to help human evolution progress, help our consciousness progress. So what we're going to be seeing in 2024 is the impulse for the past Atlantean karma, which is not to equally and balanced progress, which is to have our human consciousness create shorter and shorter attention spans, become dull or dumb it down, while being overly dependent on technological electrification. And what that does is create a grid around the earth, a synthetic one. And so people start getting all these exotic impulses or exotic ailments. And really, it's because what that's calling forth in the larger attractor field of the human consciousness, of the human collective, is that's attracting entropy, degeneration, deterioration. Because once again, the human organic consciousness of body, mind, spirit is not going into its evolutionary form. So that's another thing we're also going to be experiencing in 2024. And that is our connection with form, with physicality, specifically divine masculine and divine feminine. Because what we have been experiencing thus far has been the clashing of those energies. And those clashing of those energies did not start within this age. It started actually when human consciousness started taking form in the first place in Lemuria. And so the Lemurian karma is also what we're going to be processing. How that will play out is through politics. Politics is something that humanity still just gets wrong all the time, because one of our strongest lessons is authority. And so because of that, if human sovereignty is not accessed and embodied, well then, guess what we get a reflection of inside our political arena? And therefore, our entire way that our reality is shaped, we get straight up toxic reflections of that lack of inner sovereignty and inner authority. Gets played out in larger than life scenarios and becomes collective themes. And how that's going to play out with that combined with form, meaning our physical relationship, is through the masculine and the feminine energies. And how we will know whether we're accessing and on the right track to more empowering timelines is when we're seeing these figures of authority in, shall we say, more aligned, more integrated forms. Because what we have seen thus far when it comes to our political arena is toxic femininity and toxic masculinity. If you'd like to know more about divine masculinity, you can watch my video on it titled The Divine Masculine, Awaken Sacred Masculinity, and how that's going to play out in 2024 is through the choices that we see for elections. Now, that doesn't mean that when we see a choice for an election, that is something that we need to align ourselves with. That is a personal call for each individual. I'm not saying that a person needs to vote. I'm not saying that a person needs to believe in the political theater. All I'm saying is that if we want to take a temperature reading of the progress, the evolution of the reality that we're in, how we see that and larger themes, how we can take a temperature reading of which way the collective is going, where it's going, is by looking at the political figures that are taking the largest positions. Not because they actually matter, but because what that's showing us is a huge collective mirror. And if I'm being completely honest, the divine masculine, when it comes to these collective mirrors, as well as the divine feminine, has not been present in them. And actually this year, there is one figure that we're seeing that actually represents the divine masculine. He is currently running as an independent, and his presence is helping unprogram the awakening collective out of the controlled opposition, toxic masculinity that they have been falling for in past years. Now that's really important. And once again, not because we have to lower our consciousness into the political arena. It's because that reflection at such a large scale is confirmation, if we needed any, that the divine masculine presence within the awakening collective is firmly integrated and embodied. So what we see is that now, as within, so without, being seen as an option. And that's always one of the ways that you can tell, even if you're an advanced being that's far ahead of the curve and far ahead of the collective, that's ways that we gauge exactly the aggregate, the average of the collective consciousness. It's through those options and choices. Even if you're a voluntarian like me and you don't care about the political arena, that's showing you something about the health of the ones who are going through spiritual awakenings, the ones that are in what I would consider the conscious collective. That's showing that there's healthy masculinity being embodied. And so also with that, divine femininity. Because of that, gender is a very key theme, as well as technology, going into 2024, but it's always been, ever since we've been inside the age of Aquarius, because those are the two shadow themes within the age of Aquarius, gender and technology. And 2024 is going to be a peak of those. So all of this karma clearing that's taking place from past ages into the wrapping up of this age is something that can be looked at based off of our own perceptions as something bad or good. I don't view this as being very negative, but if a being is very attached into the old paradigm and stuck in the ego rather than moving with the impulse and the ascension energies into unity consciousness, then that's something that can be perceived and taken as absolutely devastating. But either way you cut the cookie, it's going to be a tower year. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be bad and it has to be negative. It just means if we can ebb and flow with the chaos, with the volatile energies, this could even be fun. And so when it comes to concepts like us tapping into and accessing a new earth, creating that new earth takes us into strong levels of chaos. And what that's doing is actually helping us release the structures of older, outdated paradigms. All that's telling us from universal consciousness perspective is that if we don't embody unity consciousness, we are not welcomed in this experience anymore. And so to learn more about that, you can watch my video on it titled Shifting to a New Earth, Unity Consciousness. Because in that video, I go into how karma and dharma don't actually need to be adversarial. And that's what we're going to see moving forward, is that those that are embodying unity consciousness will be able to release the attachments to older structures and paradigms, and therefore be able to be the solution for that, but that we're still not lifting ourselves into a dimension or a density to where we're etheric. So what that's going to look like, what that's going to take is conscious action. Conscious actions by people within unity consciousness is what's going to create a new earth and allow us to shift onto those timelines. I hope this helps you ride the tidal waves of 2024. Make sure to subscribe to my channel for higher dimensional guidance through spiritual awakening. See you next time.